So I got involved and basically said, yeah, I'm never going to hear that again. And he and I had a come to Jesus moment about the whole thing. But what's behind even why that tends to bother us? Yeah, I'm never going to hear that. What is going on? And I'm glad you're here. Let me know where you're from, and if you can hear us, sounds okay, etc. But I want to talk to you about this and something that'll cure you and how to cure you from being concerned about kind of what people think or say or do. And it can be spouses, it can be kids to parents, it can be neighbors, family members, etc. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to try to walk through this, but I want to start. Jody knows none of this.
No, we hadn't.
I mean, she knows some of what I'm going to talk about. She knows what
We
I'm
haven't
talking about.
talked about today.
There's no plot here. So she's going to be surprised and be able to disagree with you, disagree with me along with you. So I want to talk about mockingbirds first. So mockingbirds. I was sitting out back watching the hummingbirds flit around and listening. We have a mockingbird like sit on a tall telephone pole and sing. And so I got thinking about it and listening to that mockingbird. And here's what we know about mockingbirds. The male, can have up to 200 songs. Ours is particularly fond of red-shouldered hawks and blue jays, which is fun. We don't get many of those around here. I had a lot growing up in Alabama. It likes all kinds of Tweety birds and different things. I don't exactly know, but he's loaded. I can just say that. The mockingbird, strangely enough, I don't know. I don't think any bird comes close. The cardinal might, but it's the state bird in 5 states. Texas is one, Mississippi, Florida, Arkansas, and Tennessee, if I remember correctly. So this mockingbird, imagine if a mockingbird was a human being. As soon as it did the, red-shouldered hawk or something like that, there would be everyone getting onto it. It's cultural appropriation, or it's you didn't do it right, or who do you think you are, pretending you're a hawk, something like that. And if it was human, the way we function, it literally probably wouldn't sing anything. Just stick to your song. Who do you think you are, doing what you do? But fortunately, the mockingbird doesn't think that way. In fact, the mockingbird is not doing it really for the sake of other birds. Maybe there's an attraction thing with female, I don't know. But it's just doing its thing. And if I could do something to get you to do your thing, to do what you want to do without being obsessed on what others think, your homeschooling and your parenting and your marriage relationship and your friendships and your church experience and honestly, how you interact in restaurants would completely change. So what I want to try to do is show you the way out. That makes sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where I'm going?
Not yet.
So I want to show you something I do to kind of renew my mind, if I can say it that way. What I want to do, let's see if I can get this to work right. So I do something called aphorisms. So aphorisms, obviously I really prepared for this. Aphorisms, this is one called What Others Think of Me. And what I do with aphorisms is I sit and I really try to ponder over a period of days, sometimes weeks, go back to them, different sayings or ways I could say something. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not. It's a way of me thinking. But by the time I go through this, I've really got my mind to understand and focus on something in a clearer way than I would just hearing a passing quote. And so what I want to do is challenge you and just share a bunch of these with you and see if this is helpful. So the big aphorism is this. I didn't invent this one. I heard like Anthony Hopkins say it recently, or some quote of his, and I've heard it before. And I've heard it partly because I will read Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoics. And the Stoics basically had this understanding that it's not what happens to you, it's how you think about it. And so that's a big part of my life, that, it's really hard to think crooked and walk straight. One of the things I like to say. And so what I want to do is walk you through a number of these, see if I can show you how to maybe think a little differently. Okay. So this first one is, what others think of me is none of my business. So what others think of me is none of my business. And what that means is, it is not part of my concern domain to take action, fix, or anything what they think. Okay. So people can have thoughts about me and about you, but it's not really any of your business to fix what they think. And let me show you some of the reasons why. So the second one is, I don't know if these are going to show up as well. It probably will if I can take, oops.
Oh, that's good.
What's good?
The visual. Oh.
I see what's going on. Well, that'll work. I'm sure it's a lighting problem. So if I take this off. Sorry, these little electronic gadgets that I like so much create challenges. So number 2, anything I cannot control is none of my business. Yeah, so if you can't control something, why is it your business to try to control it? And that's what we do with human beings. We tend to think we can control how they think of us. And so as a result, we try to. That's sort of the proverbial game. There's another one. I can't control what others think of me. Okay, so that goes with it, right? So if you can't control what others think of you, why are you trying? It's none of your business. Even if I can control it, it still may be none of my business. So there are things that we probably could control that we oughtn't, especially as our kids get older and into adulthood. It's not really any of our business how they live their life. That doesn't mean you can't have conversations, etc., and I'll get to that. Number 4, if you're surprised at their response, you expected a response. So if somebody says something that surprises you, you had to have had an expectation in there. Number 5, expectation is the mother of pain. This is part of what goes on. I've watched people get really upset with cats because they kill a bird. And it's like, that's what cats do. I can't really control what cats do. By their nature, they like to kill things. And if you're sitting there upset with a cat for killing a bird, you have a really strange expectation about cats.
True.
Right?
Very true.
You having had cats, know what I'm talking about. Jody always likes to point out that all her cats like to kill something, show it off to the babies and them,
Yes.
Number 6, this is a quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was a famous emperor and wrote all this stuff privately for himself, and we found copies of it. Only one thing is important: to behave throughout your life toward the liars, crooks around you with kindness, honesty, and justice. What my wife thinks of me is none of my business. Now, I'm going to spoil it. The reason I'm saying this is, if you think it's your business, then you'll try to manipulate, control, react, and change how they think of you. 8, anyone whose opinion of you matters to you is your master. And if you go through life concerned about what others think of you, they're going to be able to basically control you. 9, self-opinion is none of my business either. I think that's true, but that would have another conversation. And then technically, nothing is my business except what I choose to think about, solve, or create. So it's what I think about, what I choose to do and what I create out there, those things are definitely my business. Real quick, my legacy is none of my business. This is a big thing nowadays. My legacy is none of my business, since it too is a focus on what I want others to think of me forever. So imagine a mockingbird thinking, I want these people to like me. What songs are on their list? The mockingbird's doing it because that's what he does. He's in charge of that. What others think of me can be a point of curiosity, but should never be a point of surprise, joy, or disappointment. Persuasion, number 13, is an invitation, not a demand, when you're trying to persuade people. Therefore, it's not a measure of approval or rejection of me when they are or aren't persuaded, because they're in charge of their thinking. You can invite them, you can give reasoning, you can give understanding, but you trying to control that they buy it, that's starting to get into a domain of manipulation and control. And I'm going to encourage you to stay away from that. So the last page here, I'll skip ahead. Plan to skip ahead. My business is what I do, not what they think about what I do. If I were them, I'd probably think the same thing about me. Or as I like to say, if they knew what I knew, they'd probably think even worse about me. Others' opinions of me is their business, but since they are neither a judge or jury, it doesn't affect me. And then finally, just a refined version. My wife's respect or disrespect of me is also none of my business. You can do that with your husband. Your husband's respect or disrespect, your child's respect or disrespect, your mother's disrespect or respect, your dad's respect or disrespect. Now, this one in particular is probably a little more controversial, because we're so used to thinking husbands need to be respected and wives safe and all the rest. And all that's fine. As far as it goes, I would encourage you to be respectful of everybody, even your enemies. Be kind to them. But what this is getting at is that if you don't think this way, if you think how your wife respects you is your business, or how your husband thinks of you is yours, or how your child thinks of you is your business, then you're going to try to force them to agree with you, to show you respect, to treat you a certain way. And that's a recipe for conflict. So when we think about homeschooling, and we think about parenting, and we think about our kids and what they do and don't do, and how they respond and don't respond, if we could understand that it's not really any of our business, what they think about us, because they can think what they want. I'm not saying I wouldn't like it, but I'm saying you can get out of the control game. And when you get out of the control game, you're going to do what you do based on principle, based on precedence, based on things you've learned, based on results you want to create in this world. And so when you're building a homeschool, that what they think of you is none of your business. Not saying you might not like it, but I'm saying that's not the driver. The driver then would be, I want to do a good job with my homeschool. I want to build what I can into my kids' lives. I want to give them skills and knowledge and a moral, virtuous orientation as best I can. You can't guarantee that either. But getting this clear in your mind that others' opinion of you is none of your business is part of the path. It's part of the trick. So when your child's upset, what happens is your child's upset about doing school, and suddenly you can get caught up in, well, I want them to love me, and I want them to like this and that. And wanting them to like school is a different thing, because you can try to do things to invite them to like it. But when it bothers you deeply because you're afraid, gosh, if they grow up and they don't like me, then they won't let me see the grandkids. They won't be involved with us. They'll say bad things about us. And eventually, if you run it out, you'll die alone. that's the fear. And so that fear drives you to manipulate things instead of you being driven by good principles and good values, and like being a mockingbird, like singing your song because you're going to sing your songs because that's what you do. You can take feedback, you can learn. If you're not getting the results you want, that's a thing. But if the result is to control how somebody thinks about you, you have started out out of touch with reality, and you've started out in a process to where you're not going to live the principles. You're going to take all your cues from how people think about you. And I'm inviting you to renew your mind, to go in a different path, to really think this through, that others' opinions of you is none of your business. Comments? Questions?
It's
thoughts?
huge. I mean, it will probably, y'all are probably sitting there going, yeah, right, yeah. So then it's, how do we take these things and really internalize them and live them out? It's
Yeah.
important thing.
And if you heard me say I'm good at this, you misheard it. I'm in the process of really getting this clear into my mind, my heart, my soul. So I want to own it. I want to get it into my bones that their opinion of me is none of my business. What is my business is what I think, what I do, the actions I take, what I create, that kind of stuff, right? Problems I solve.
Right.
All right. So there's the little fun fact from Fred.
Good stuff.
So it's we're open to questions, and I'm game for anything, or we are, especially about this topic. So Michael's asking, what device was I using? The popular one is like a Remarkable, I think. This one is called a Note Air by Books, Boox, Note Air by Books. And in my research, the reason I picked it out is it had a backlighting, so I could use it at night. That was particularly good. It has better search features. It'll convert your writing into text, some things like that. So there are aspects of it that I just found it to be a much more flexible thing. I found that when it's like Tim Allen's old more power thing, that when you have something that can do more, then it gives you options. Now, sometimes that gets so complicated you can't use it. So I don't mean that, but anyway, that's it. It's that air, what I call it.
Did you say Boox?
Yeah, Books.
Books.
And it's do it again. Note Air. I should learn the name, Sure, I can remember the states that have mockingbirds. I can't remember Note Air. That's the way it goes. Good question. Anyway, hope you found that helpful. And I've found it very useful in terms of keeping things together and having something with me. I can click on a button and it opens my like commentaries and stuff if I'm in church and the sermon's not just totally grabbing my attention. I can study the passage in parallel. So it'll hook to the internet and let me look at things. That was another feature that I appreciated. So what kind of questions are going on in your mind, heart, homeschool, gearing up for summer, for life, planning the next year, trying to finish up this year? Any of those things are great. There's also a delay in the system. So I know even when I say, hey, throw questions up, people,
it takes a little bit.
Yeah, it takes a little time. It does indeed.
Any things that you've tried that we've talked about? Did they work? Did they not work? How's it going with some of the things we've discussed in the past? That would be great too.
Yes, it would. You got any questions you run across from time to time? Jody?
Oh, me? No. I'm not talking to as many homeschoolers as I used to.
Just in your day to day.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, so I went out. I'm playing around with AI to see if it's useful, see how much it's controlling me, that kind of stuff. So I threw it a question today that I thought was particularly helpful. So we can talk through it. If this is helpful, I'm trying to highlight this thing for you guys. I'm sorry, but I don't have to mention any of this. And I'm glad not to. But what questions are you battling with, thinking about, struggling with, interested in, or insights you've got?
Yes.
Yeah. Or any successes. We love to hear those things you tried and did, and it sort of kind of actually worked out. That's always exciting as well. So,
sure.
yeah, we need questions. As you're drumming those up, let me show you what I ran into or covered that I think would be helpful to mention here. So, share screen. So, in theory, you'll be able to see me now. And what I want to look at real quick are these things. So, I asked homeschooling can present various challenges for families. Some of the biggest challenges homeschoolers face include, and I just said, what challenges do homeschoolers face? So this would have been from 2022, but I doubt things have changed much. The first one is finding the right curriculum. Then time management. I don't think these are in order. Socialization, lack of resources and financial constraints, self-motivation, discipline, limited extracurricular activities, and 7, parent confidence and expertise.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I would say these are actually the things that we discuss all the time. I mean, literally all the time. So let me just share some of these things. Okay, finding the right curriculum. I think that's true, but it actually goes to parental confidence and expertise. So Jody and I, so I've got a earned doctorate and Jody's got a master's degree. And while you think that would, that make confident, don't bet because we're humans too, and we're concerned what everybody thinks.
Yes.
But this confidence, it says homeschooling requires parents to take on the role of teacher, which can be intimidating for those without a background in education. Building confidence and acquiring the necessary knowledge and skills so effectively they can teach. It can be a challenge. So what we finally switched to was that our confidence was not in our teaching because we decided we weren't going to be the teachers. We actually decided that we're going to be the causers of learning, right? Chief learning officers. We're going to create an approach that helps the kids learn to teach themselves. Because part of our confidence was that these little kids that were handed us have been hardwired to learn anyway, notwithstanding, you know, learning disabilities and challenges, etc. But on balance, kids can learn, and you can watch this. They learn stuff all the time. And if you understand that, then what happens is your confidence goes up. The other part of confidence goes up is the competition, at least for me, because as I looked out in our world we were in at the time, we were not enamored with the schools, and we had been through education, so we knew a thing or two, but I wasn't convinced at all that they were just putting out stellar students. To some degree, they can because they're the system itself, despite what they want to claim about equity and equality, is actually filtering the really good students into what do they call those programs? advanced placement or
Yeah.
AP, something like that. And so they're getting extra attention. Now, I actually somewhat like that idea. I think if slower students could have a context in which they're really helped to progress in these mass education things, I think that would be great. Advanced students need challenges that match them. And a lot of times these classrooms are so big that all they can do is teach to the middle. And so in teaching right to the middle, they're can tend to bore the more advanced students, and they can go over the heads of the others. So what we do is we get tutors, and tutors help individuals get better. And that's what homeschooling is. You're a tutor. You can catch their mistakes. You can see what's going on. It's hard for them to cheat. They do. Ours, we had two that cheated. So, but they got caught and they had to deal with it. But what we're really looking at is your confidence needs to be in the design of human beings to learn, not in your skills in teaching. Frankly, most all of us learn in spite of the teaching method, not because of it. And that's part of the trick in life. So when you go back to a curriculum, for us, we settled on Robinson because it was a framework that we could adjust and add to, but it really helped the kids learn the skills they need: reading, writing, and arithmetic, math. And you know, reading, that actually gives you access to all the minds of history and what's going on out there. And the reading itself really helps the brain organize and put things together in great ways. Reading is necessary to learn math as well. And so math is the language of science, and that language of science has with it logic and problem solving in it. Math does, and it has teaching absolutes. There are rights and there are wrongs, and there's truth and there's error, and there's you got that problem right, you got that problem wrong. And in a world that says, "Oh, we're all right," you know, unless we want to cancel you, that's an important thing to learn. And then writing itself is much harder than both of those because it's really causing you to think, and it's teaching you how to communicate. And so you're very busy with writing. In Robinson, they tend to think writing, they start with the hardest thing of the day, math. Math is not hard. Math is hard because you keep introducing new stuff. If you did the same math every day, it'd be get easier, easier, and boring and boring. When you're writing, when a child's writing, they're making hundreds of decisions in a page. I mean, so they're really having to think it through and try to make sense of it. And they're better at it later than earlier. So you want to keep writing a good bit, right? So let me get out of this, see if we got any questions that have popped up as we're sharing that stuff. And see what, I always have this problem getting to that page. So here are the questions. Michael throws out, I'm curious to know your opinion on who you think delivers the best sermons. I understand that this can be quite subjective, but I'm interested in hearing about any pastors, preachers, or priests you admire or find impactful. Yeah, that is a little tricky, and it's a good question. I don't listen to as many people nowadays as I did at one point in my life, but I do have people I like. But not everything. I mean, I don't agree with everything I believe. So, you know, I'm busy cutting slack. But I can tell you what I look for in a preacher, and it's not just preachers, it's any public speaker, anybody speaking.
Okay, well,
Yeah, it could be writing too, but he's asking particularly about speaking. Speaking its own thing. There are a lot of really great speakers that are terrible. I mean, writers that are terrible speakers.
Okay.
There are a lot of great, you know, speakers that can't write. You know, you could probably record it and get somebody to edit it. That's a lot of what they do. But before I yammer on, what about you? Who do you like?
Oh gosh.
Or who have you liked? Why?
I like to listen ever so often on I probably could find out actually when he's still on, an old deceased pastor, J. Vernon McGee. I really enjoy his
I just got
messages.
from Texas.
But So, um,
What'd you like about him? That's a good question.
well, yeah. I think he's scriptural, but entertaining's not the right word, but I just enjoy his delivery. He has kind of some homespun stuff in there and seems to really care. I don't know.
Well,
But
and McGee might fit that way. So what I'm kind of looking for, I kind of look for three things. One is, are they coming up with the information from the passage they're looking at? You know, the old joke is among certain pastors, they go, "Man, I've got a great message. I just need a passage now." And that's usually not a good way to go. So what we're really looking for is someone that's being faithful to explain the text, right? And then the second thing, I really like simplicity, not overly simple, but I like to listen to someone that is making sense of what I'm looking at. So it's not just they're reading a word or two and then yammering about, blathering on about something somewhat related, but am I really understanding? Are they really showing me how to look at the passage such that when I go away and read it myself, I don't read it quite the same way. I have a different kind of clarity to it. And then the third thing I look for, well, I actually in the simplicity, maybe I should call it four, but it's always practical too. So it's got to be life oriented. Like, what do I do with this, or what do I believe differently, or how do I think differently? So I'm concerned about that. But that fourth thing would be, do they convey that they believe it? A lot of them sound like it's a good show, and they're entertaining, but it's like, I'm not sure if this is a burden in your life. And they fake in different ways. I've known preachers that can cry at the drop of a hat. I never could. If I had is worse when I would teach two or three times on a Sunday morning, and back in the day, and I'd have a great illustration, and it would make me tear up because it was so touching. But then by the second one, and for sure by the third, I'd sort of cried out. So I really couldn't fake it as well as I would have liked to have. But you can imagine, and part of the trick is the extent to which they read their sermons, or the extent to which I have to take notes if I take notes, it's a pretty good sign they haven't done a good job. And follow my thought. I mean, you all have notes and you have them on your shelves and you don't look at them probably. But the trick is, when you use notes, you're copying a professorial like college model. So they're doing points, subpoints, and all. And they're going through their notes. And for you to grab it, you have to go through notes. They don't have it in their head in a way that's simple and clear and useful. And you can, what affected me the most in thinking this through was back in, well, there are a lot of things, but there's a book written in 1898. I forget where it is. When I was reading it, it made this point. It said, imagine a lawyer arguing before a jury by reading a speech. See, that's not a live connection with an audience. Good speaking is sort of a one-on-one conversation with a group. I mean, that varies because, if you're speaking to 100,000 people, you got to say, I have a dream. You got to do it that way. You can't say, I have a dream. It just won't sound right. So there is that piece of it. But it's like, do they buy it? Is it coming from their heart? And when they don't use notes, but they really have a clear message in their head, they're sticking with the passage, that way of thinking, they've got to keep it simple enough. I found I have to keep it simple enough in my mind so that when I say it, it's simple enough for them to remember and to go off and think about it. And then with Bible teaching, or preaching, whatever, you got a passage there. So you have some notes kind of in front of you. But those would be the things I look for. People I like, have varied, that I enjoyed listening to. I liked, there's some of his theology I don't like. There's some of his theology I don't like a lot. But I have always appreciated how John MacArthur would really work through a text and try to be faithful to give you an idea of what it's saying. I grew up with Swindoll, similar way, but he's more of the application side of it. These are old folks like Jada Vernon McGee. There's a guy named Vance Havner I've heard speak. I liked him a lot. He had a lot of great sayings, like a bulldog can whip a skunk any day, but it just ain't worth it. That was pretty good. I remember him teaching one time and he always stuck with me. He was telling us in a chapel, students, that said you can't be optimistic with a misty optic. And his point was, you get up and read the news and what's terrible in the world and all the rest of this stuff, and it clouds your perspective. And so, what you talk about, what you read, et cetera, really affects that. So wholesome, decent, good things. Same with your kids. People who are popular today. Who have I liked? There's it's a lot of controversy. There's a really good talk by Alistair Begg on the middleman on the cross. If I remember it right, I don't remember where he gave it, but it's a particularly excellent speech or talk. And then a lot of these guys, I like Tony Evans. I know Tony. I've had meals with him, and so some of these folks I appreciate in different ways. But for me, I found that I could spend a lot of time copying people and sound like them. So I kind of backed off some of that, similar to commentaries. I read commentaries as after I've roughly tried to figure out and understand the passage so I can have an argument. Otherwise, I just get caught up in their line of thought. That's not a really good answer, but
Yeah, I mean, different. I know people that listen to different pastors, every week. One of my friends, she does an interesting thing. She has two grown kids that are away from home, and she would listen to their sermon, like whatever church they went to. It might not be on Sunday, but a lot of times I think it actually is on Sundays. But she would listen to her kids' sermons that they heard so that she could discuss that with them later, which I thought, well, that's pretty cool if you have that time and all. And nowadays, I mean, since COVID, I guess almost every pastor, at least in America, their stuff's all online. It's all been taped. It's all out there, which didn't used to be the case necessarily. But anyway, I just thought that was it's kind of cool thing to do. And that's another way she connects to her grown children.
excellent. Yeah, so I was trying to look up some of this. Here we go. I was trying to ask chat to tell me, oh, who are famous folks. So I've got I like Charles Stanley. I'm looking here. Andy Stanley and I are friends, but I'm not sure quite what Andy's saying these days. Confusing to me. They have Tony Evans in here. And Steve Furtick, I know he's popular. There's some like Chan and others, and they're okay, but their constant message is a little bothersome to me. It seems to a lot of these messages keep getting into looking at what we do and judge ourselves. And I like people to get me to look at the Lord and not obsess on me, but obsess on him and truth. That's just the way I work. And I know people have different religious backgrounds and all. So I'm just sharing what my experience is. Some of these folks, TD Jakes, again, some of what he teaches, I'm not sure about, and he's in some controversy. Most of these people are in controversy, but he's definitely a really good communicator. There's no doubt about that. Some of these others, has on here, Joel Osteen. I don't find him as well. I remember the kids we were watching Joel Osteen one day. I had them watch it. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, he's very popular. And I'm not getting on to him and not in a debate. But one of the kids looked at me and said, he hadn't said anything, Daddy. And it was sort of true. So a lot of times you get these sayings, cliches, and their theme, and it's you're not really learning as much as you're hearing another version of the pep talk. There's a lot of preachers that everything's always about evangelism, and that's not exactly food. That's fine. I mean, it's great, but I'm just saying, yeah, that's sort of that story. Um, Joyce Meyer, I know people like her, and she is a lot of her stuff is trying to think practically when I've seen it, especially about getting your thinking straight. So I resonate with that. So a lot of it is resonating with the message, but for the most part, that's not exactly how I get fed. The pastor I'm most interested in is the one at our own church. So I'm interested in cheering for him, helping him, and learning from him. And a lot of times I'm in service and I'm not learning that much. And so what I do is I read my Bible and I really pray. And sometimes I'm not learning, not because I'm simply unteachable, which may totally be true, but it's, at my age of a lot of this I've heard, and who you're having to minister to or new people or young people or people of different levels. And so what I'll do is spend time praying for people to hear stuff, understand stuff, and I'll interact in my head and think about it and think about maybe other ways to say it or why that's true or what I can do with it. So that's my long story.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't ask me that. Um, for sure, don't ask me about how to catch fish because I'll go on forever about that. And I hadn't fished in years, sadly. Well, I fished last summer. Um, anyway, other questions about any of this stuff, how we think, um, uh, how we learn, what we're trying to do with kids. We have these other pieces on this page, and I just got to, the curriculum part.
Well, time management is interesting because I think we talk a lot about that in different ways. The scheduling, loose, having a schedule, having a routine, um, all that, all those things are things we've talked about. And I think even the socialization used to be, it's interesting that was in there to me because it used to be such a big deal when we were first homeschooling. Like, oh my gosh, your children are going to be so weird. They're not going to have friends. And it's, I don't know anybody that's having that issue right now. But
yeah, socialization, what chat pulled up from its thinking, its research or whatever, machine learning. Homeschoolers may face challenges in finding opportunities for social interaction, developing social skills. It's important for parents to seek out social activities and groups to provide opportunities for their children to interact with peers. This is where I would say, why peers? Why not people? So it could be adults, it could be older adults, it could be younger. There's a lot of learning how to um, uh, function well with social skills, but it needs a range of people. It's not just the peers. And this is, I think, one of the problems that you have peers like all the riots and insurrections we see on campuses, and I call them that, are a bunch of peers talking to each other. And, they envy something, they are taking up some banner for the downtrodden, sort of not understanding the story. They kind of identify with the group, and then they find out what the group believes. And I'm not against the right to do it, but the way in which they're pulling it off is it's like we in this narrow group and our age and whatever are smarter, better, wiser than having a real conversation. And I'd call that a problem. And on time management, I'd say with Jody, I mean, they said balancing homeschooling with other commitments, responsibilities be difficult. Parents need to establish structured schedule to ensure that all subjects, activities are covered effectively. And if it's not a structured schedule, it better be a structured, uh, we want to get to certain points by certain points in time, or you're not going to learn. Unless you have a strategy of measuring it and seeing that they are learning. But on some level, you've got to have an idea of how you want your child to finish homeschooling. What skills do they have? What knowledge do they have? What orientation do they have? What did they learn? What are they equipped with? Because the way we like to say it is you're actually trying to raise or grow happy adults. That's the game.
Yes. And the more equipped they are in all those different areas of life, the happier they will be as adults.
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
Well, okay. You give it the much better chance.
Well, yeah, they have a chance to be happy adults. Now, if you teach children to be wise, wisdom comes with it, a sobering reality of what you're feeling within the world. And you do have more peace, you do have more joy, you're happier.
Content.
But you can. But all I'm saying is with wisdom comes the ability to handle it too. But you can see the tough nature of humanity and suffering and problems because you see into it in a particular way and you're willing to look at it. A lot of people just try to avoid it and avoid problems and pain and difficulties instead of learning how to just hurt with those that hurt. You don't always have to have a proverbial answer. All right, I don't see any more questions, but that's a good run at it. Hope you found this helpful. Pass it along to your friends, and we'll keep doing this if if it's helpful. If it's not, we'll do something else. Anyway, hope you have